Merry Christmas, everyone, and happy holidays. If you don't celebrate Christmas, as usual, annually, me and No Luck are gonna do some type of Christmas character versus some type of anime character, and see how they stack up to one another. No Luck, you can introduce yourself.
I'm No Luck.
Anyway,
I'm so good at this shit.
So this year we're doing Gojo versus the Grinch, and the Grinch is kind of powerful, so we're gonna save his stuff for the the later half of the video. For now, why don't you get us started with just like a little rundown on Gojo?
Alright, so for those unenlightened, Gojo is he's kind of him from like JJK, right? So like Gojo's main thing is this ability called Limitless and another ability called Six Eyes. Limitless is like this manipulation of like the physics of his verse, right? So he's got three forms of it. One pushes, one pulls, and then one kind of just slows everything down to the point where it looks like it stops, right? He achieves this by either adding space to the world, removing space from the world, or in the case of his neutral Limitless, he creates an infinite series of infinity or an infinite series of events, whichever interpretation you want to use, to basically slow things down. Any foreign object, most foreign objects actually, to the point where they look like they have stopped before they reached him. And it's not that they really stop, again, it's just they're getting so slow that it looks like they stop. That's the basic rundown of his abilities for like Limitless. He has a few other applications, so like his blue, the removal of space. He can use it to remove space between himself and somewhere else or someone else, right? And he can use this to effectively teleport or to speed himself up. So for example, he can use this to pull people into his punches, which if you've ever boxed, if you've ever been in MMA, if you lean into a punch, it is like 90 times more effective. It hurts a lot more. I mean, Limitless is his main thing here. And then we also have Hollow Purple. Hollow Purple is like the creation of imaginary mass. For those, I won't get too far into the theoretical physics of this, but I will say, if imaginary mass meets, normal mass, they both should be deleted, theoretically. They should both simply cease to exist. Now, in the most recent chapters, we've seen this just isn't the case, so it's not perfect imaginary mass.
Yeah, it's weird to talk about, because when you talk about Hollow Purple colliding with things, theoretically, like Nola said, it should just delete stuff, but in JJK it doesn't. Like Sukuna can survive it by amping himself with cursed energy and whatnot, and maybe cursed energy can just protect from existence erasure or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't do what it's hypothetically supposed to do, like based on physics and whatnot. A little bit more on Infinity, or like the neutral Limitless, is like the Achilles and the tortoise paradox. The paradox is fairly easy to explain. It's a paradox that denies motion by implying that to get from point A to point B, it'll take an infinite amount of time, because between whole numbers there's an infinite amount of smaller numbers, like 1.999 repeating, and you never get to 2 meters or something like that. Obviously, the big debate when it comes to Gojo is always, well, can X character get past this ability? Because it's really his main ability. Because even if you're faster than Gojo, even if you're stronger than him, this ability normally anyway just negates those factors and allows him to either draw at a stalemate or just outright get the win on someone else. The Grinch can breathe and reveal light particles, which is actually wild, right? Because the Grinch's breath, it can knock people out, and if it can reveal light particles and interact with photons like that, photons are smaller than atoms, and infinity with Wink works on an atomic level. Now, the statement people normally use to say infinity works on an atomic level, I think really only applies to Red, because when he uses Red, Miguel is like, okay, this is what Geto was talking about, the limitless jujutsu that works on an atomic level. So I think it's a bit weird to say that infinity works on that same scale, or the neutral limitless, but even if you do, the Grinch could bypass it with his breath.
So him breathing near Gojo would actually be very problematic for him.
Yeah.
I don't know if his barrier is stopping that to start with. So like at the end of Hidden Inventory, or I guess season 2 for anime only watchers, Gojo mentions that he wants to advance his neutral limitless to a point where he can filter out poisons like automatically and such, but he never even really shows that he figures out how to get this to happen, much less like automatically, right? At no point does this ever get shown or like implied to have been perfected. And honestly, it's bad because unless we want to just wank like neutral limitless to say nothing gets through it at all, which is just not the case because obviously light gets through it, sound gets through it because he can hear other people with his barrier up. It's just we just we can't find a reasonable way to say that this will filter out poisons. So that's why the poison problem is actually like a very big factor in this fight.
Yeah, and then too with the Grinch has like different forms of Toon Force. So one of the more prominent ones he has is the fact that he can turn his eyebrows into like this winged bird of death. I really don't know how else to describe it. He can turn his eyebrows into just another like semi-sentient being or a weapon in order to, if he needs to, buy time against Gojo. And it's not like, at least from the looks of it, you know, their eyebrows, it's not like they have a brain or anything or something like that. I suppose Gojo could destroy them with purple or something. They haven't really been shown to have any high durability feats, so there really wouldn't be an argument against that. But yeah, he can like 2v1 with his eyebrows unironically. Another thing the Grinch has is just being able to grow in size. Now, I want your opinion on like, do you think that would be more problematic for him since he's a bigger target at that point?
Yeah, I think the size itself isn't much of an advantage because he can make himself smaller. We've actually seen that he can make himself smaller than an ant, quote unquote, in one of his stories, or he can make himself bigger than a Whosaurus. And I'm not 100% sure what a Whosaurus is. It sounds like a Who dinosaur or something. The size doesn't really matter for that. I don't think, if anything, it is a disadvantage, like you said. It's just the fact that his anatomy is like so weirdly durable because of Toon Force that he can do these things to himself and just not take damage. Another one, like another example of this is like him turning his head around 360 degrees and like turning other body parts around or taking body parts off. You don't hear any cracking or anything. He takes no damage, so like breaking bones or like, you know, disfiguring him in any way doesn't seem to be like the method to kill him.
He just really has like weird anatomy to him. Like when he's slithering around the Christmas tree, or he slithers up the Christmas tree as well. Like No Luck mentioned, he's like turning his entire head around. It all seems to like the way it looks. It all seems to like stem from his Toon Force ability, because he's always like either interacting with the fourth wall or being weird with the fourth wall. Like specifically when he's turning his neck around, he's like looking directly at you, looking directly at the camera, right? So it's just weird for him with his Toon Force and all that. Now I'll let you talk about this because, you know, you're more on the physics side of things, how his Toon Force allows him to defy the laws of physics and whatnot. That's your specialty.
Good lord, this man be like, okay, if I wasn't like, I don't know, scaling characters right now, I'd be so irritated by like how he doesn't do physics right. Okay, so like one thing, him touching or jumping on sound waves destroys them. There's so many things wrong with that. Like, you guys don't understand. That's like, you know how like you guys have heard like, you know, a squared circle, or you try to fit the triangle piece in the little kid's puzzle and you try to fit it in like, you know, the square instead of the triangle where it fucking belongs. No. This is like you trying to fit the ocean into the triangle slot where it belongs. Like, no, this is so wrong. But like he has very basic moments where he defies physics. So like sticking to walls when he really shouldn't, or like when he jumps on air where there should be nothing for him to leverage, when he's slithering across the floor, like Six mentioned, with no created friction or, you know, anything from his body. Like, it's insane. And then another one, okay, so when he's breaking physics, by the way, he's doing it in ways that aren't just like, oh, well, you know, he's so strong that he can fly, like the old Superman quotes where he's just like so strong that he's like keeping himself in the air. No, he's doing things that like, that would just defy our understanding of how physics should work. Like, you shouldn't even be able to touch sound waves in a way that would like disrupt them properly, like just with your regular body. Like, That's why, like, if somebody stands in front of you at a concert, you can still hear the sound waves. However, like the Grinch, we have examples in like his video games where like he jumps on sound waves and they're just obliterated. So like, I can't even describe to you guys how ridiculous that is and how that doesn't fit with any school of thought regarding like physics, not even theoretical physics. So like he's basically defying physics as we understand it at like a really, really high level because of his Toon Force. So like he can use parts of his body. So we kind of touched on this with like the eyebrows, how they can become like a semi-sentient like weapon. Like he can remove his eyes or like pull them mostly out of his head and still use them. Like he doesn't have to make sense with a lot of this, but like fictional transcendence is a really crazy one. I'm gonna try not to get too nerdy on all you guys here. So the Grinch, he can mostly, no, not even mostly, just flat out, he freely moves between like the fourth wall, right? So like anybody who's watching this, I know you've all seen Deadpool, you kind of understand what this means. So he can interact with the real world. He understands that he's in a fictional verse or he's partaking in one at the time of viewership, right? So he can do this on a crazy level. Like he's doing things, for example, the best one that I was able to find, my favorite personally, is when he references something called the Max Headroom event, or the Max Headroom hijacking incident of 1987. And what this is when someone was able to hijack the television broadcast networks of a few areas in Illinois back in 1987, and they broadcasted this really weird clip of this guy in a Max Headroom mask, just kind of like trolling, right? It looks really creepy. Like, editor, if you can put this on screen, I'll send you the clips because I really want you guys to understand how creepy this is. But like the Grinch actually references this and he imitates it in like this weird music video he does, and there's really no reason for it other than like he knows about it and nobody else does, and he's kind of a troll like the person who did the Max Headroom like hijacking, right? If you guys aren't connecting the dots, the Grinch's fictional verse is called Whoville. In Whoville, nothing like the Max Headroom hijacking incident of 87 has happened. Nothing even similar. So for him to be able to not only reference this, but like fully imitate it in like a music video that he's partaking in, I guess, like it shows that he has interactions with the real world. And it's not even just like him breaking the fourth wall like Rick and Morty, where like Rick sometimes alludes to like him potentially knowing he's in a TV show where he's like, oh yeah, this is more like season 1 or season 2. No, this is the Grinch imitating real life events and then enacting on screen and then like interacting with the viewers quite a few times. The Grinch does this in a lot of media, like in his games or in like the 2000 movie. It's really crazy to think like he actually has crazier fictional transcendence than like Rick and Morty. By the way, for those of you that really want to be mad at me, the Grinch actually scales above Rick. So fight me about it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a really crazy one. And that's kind of the same level of like fictional transcendence that you see from like Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny, I'll say this right off rip, he is better. He would scale way above the Grinch, but like he's on that same tier where he would be able to start writing his own stories and like start like impacting the story from outside the fictional verse. So like some of you know that Bugs Bunny can write his own stories. Theoretically, the Grinch would be able to write and alter stories in the same way Bugs Bunny does in any story he appears in. So if this fight were to take place in Jujutsu Kaisen or in Whoville, it wouldn't really matter because the Grinch would actually be able to alter the story and just have Gojo put on a Santa hat and like kiss his feet and just say, yeah, I win, GG. Like, this is actually such crazy fictional transcendence that like it would bypass anything that Gojo does, even at like the highest length levels for Gojo. Like if you want to put him at like hyperversal because he can alter the mechanics of how reality works, fine. It still doesn't scale to the Grinch fictionally transcending on this level.
The Grinch can also freeze people who do that, right?
Yes. So the Who's that he fights are capable of tanking some Toon Force abilities that he has in a few pieces of media, but the Grinch can still freeze them with snowballs he throws at them. So Who's that are like, I guess NPCs, the people that inhabit his verse, whatever you want to call them. I'm just gonna call them Who's because that's what they're called. They have like semi-relativity to like the Grinch's Toon Force and where it scales, which is obviously fictional transcendence, yet he can still freeze them in place. That is crazy. He could actually freeze Gojo and then just like walk up, kick him in the nuts, and just say GG no re, and he wins the fight. it's so crazy because like Gojo's like barrier doesn't scale to fictional transcendence. So he gets frozen, he gets the nut shot, he drops.
I mean, with everything like just laid out on the table, because we've pretty much gone over it all. With everything laid out on the table, I mean, I guess aside from domain expansion, but honestly, I mean, at this point, I think if the Grinch gets caught in Unlimited Void, he could just like write his way out of it. Just being real, right? But so with everything on the table, it's like, how do you say Gojo, whose ability is just based on physics, like ignoring all the physical transcendence, Gojo, whose ability is based on physics, like physics have to work in order for his ability to work, does not just get bypassed by this dude who just defies physics. Like physics in no way basically applies to the Grinch. Like they don't apply to his anatomy. He could see without his eyes in his head. They don't apply to his arms, his neck. Physics just generally don't apply to this dude. He can even like interact with dream states, right? Which is another part of his Toon Force. And I mean, at that point, it's like, what really can you expect Gojo to do? Nothing physical applies to this guy. He can do all this like crazy weird stuff.
Yeah. And the dream, okay, so like being able to interact and then like alter the dream state and then like take things out of the dream realm and bring them into the physical realm is another crazy one. So like you brought up domain expansions, right? So like domain expansion would be like at its best, we could call it something like maybe infinite 3D. I've seen arguments for like fourth dimensional scaling for domain expansions. However, interacting with like the dream realm and then pulling things out of it to make it real, whether you think this is like someone pulling something out of someone's imagination and making it real, or pulling something out of a different dimension of like dreaming, right, or imagination, both of those interpretations would still mean that you are able to bypass like limits and barriers to dimensions and realms that is like above what we can scale domains to. So even if like Gojo were to pop his like immeasurable void on Grinch could literally just walk out of it. Or alternatively, he could walk out of it, pull Gojo out of it, and then still just run his pockets, bro. Like it's not, we're talking about like there's levels to it. And like Gojo's level is like minor leagues, and then like Grinch's level is like, I don't know, NFL, NBA. Like Gojo hasn't even made it to like a junior varsity, and you know Grinch is signed. So like, I don't know.
I mean, to make a long story short, because I mean, we pretty much going over it all now. The Grinch slams. Yeah, he just wins.
he just dogs this dude.
Man. Obviously, go subscribe to No Lux channel.
Am I supposed to do final words? Final word. Peace out, guys.